If you avoid doing the inner work on yourself, here's what will happen. You will remain the age where you were hurt the most. And I know this because this was essentially me throughout my entire 20s was essentially this. I had big ambitious goals of creating a business that I loved, of never having a boss ever again, and of traveling around the world seeing exotic locations and living a life of freedom. But I could never gain any traction, at least not for very long. What would happen was I'd start making progress, and then this weird black cloud of fear and self-doubt would come up. And this is the thing that would cause me to then suddenly just sabotage myself and procrastinate myself back into this suffocating little comfort zone. And honestly, mate, I can't actually tell you how painful it was to have these big ambitious goals, to know deep down in myself that I was destined and I wanted something greater for my life than just the standard 9 to 5 that I'm not happy with, but to deep down know that I have absolutely no trust in myself to make it happen. It honestly felt like one of the most hopeless periods of my entire life. I was honestly so convinced at one point that my destiny was going to be that I was going to be one of these guys who's in his 50s, still working some job that he doesn't like, he's never actually gained any traction and taken off. And in his life, all he thinks about is regrets at all the things that he never did. I've met men like that throughout my life, and I thought I was going to be one of them. And that was when I decided to take a hard look at myself. I decided to do something that I'd never done seriously before. And that was, instead of look outside of myself like shiny object syndrome, perfect business model or niche or whatever for the answer, I decided to look within myself. And I'm lying a little bit about that because it wasn't a full-on decision. My back was against the wall because I eventually hit rock bottom. It was around this point when I had to ask my flatmates in Lisbon, Portugal to pay my rent for me. €350 a month, mate. It wasn't expensive and I couldn't afford it. It was a couple of years ago that I made that decision, and since then, my life has become all of the things I never thought it would be. It's all of the things I ever dreamed of. My life right now is essentially a direct copy of my vision board I made 3 years ago. Right now, I'm recording this in a villa in Thailand. I'm recording this video for my business, which serves men, which is my mission in life. I feel very fulfilled doing it. I travel around wherever the hell I want. In a month, I'm going to Japan from Thailand, for example, with the money, the good money that I earn doing the things I love in life. I never thought I would make it here. And mate, I'll be serious when I tell you right now, something you probably know already. The inner work is what made it happen. Your external results are a pretty much one-to-one reflection of your internal state. But there's a problem. You can't actually do inner work. Like if I asked you to sit there at your desk and do inner work, you'd just sit there and be like, what? And honestly, mate, this is something that kind of screwed me up in the beginning because I didn't have the clarity in exactly what I should be focusing on. I procrastinated on doing the inner work in a kind of hellish cycle, right? But I'm going to give you the roadmap, okay? Today I'm giving you something in this video, the thing that I wish I had when I first made that decision, which is a complete broken down step-by-step roadmap to how you actually do the inner work. I've broken it down because this is how my ADHD brain works, right? I've broken it down into phases where if you follow these phases in the right order, these phases will completely change your life, mate. I'm not even joking. Now, the first phase is, without a doubt, it's the most simple phase, but I don't want that to fool you. I don't want you to be fooled by that, okay? Because it is probably the most important phase, because without this phase, none of the other phases that we're going to talk about are possible, okay? Now, just to put things into perspective for you, most people will never achieve their goals. Most people won't. That's a harsh truth, but it's true. And one of the main reasons for this is that they are constantly distracted. The thing is, when you're distracted, your life becomes a repetitive cycle of habit. When you're too distracted and you don't actually have the focus to make anything happen and to slow down and pay attention, then the distractions will basically mean that your next 5 years of life will look like your previous 5 years, because habit will keep you stuck. You'll be stuck in this prison of habit and you will never change. So if you can't focus, this will be you. That's why the absolute first thing we need to do when it comes to doing any kind of inner work, any kind of transformational work, is to intentionally slow down. Not just in your day-to-day life, which I highly recommend, but this is why I say to clients and to you individually, mate, is that meditation, even though you know that it's important, you know it, I'm hitting it home today. It's a fucking non-negotiable, mate. Now, the best app that I have ever come across, I still use it to this day, I downloaded it like 3 years ago, I've not stopped using it, it's that good, is the Waking Up app by Sam Harris. It even has this kind of 50-day introductory meditation course to total beginners, so it's really cool. And also, mate, I don't earn any money from this. He doesn't know I exist, Sam Harris. But in the description below, I have a code, like a link that you can click to get a free 30 days, no credit card required. So you can download the app and start using it pretty much today. This alone, mate, could completely change your life. But the truth is, we're only just laying the foundation. So now that we've slowed down a little, it's now time to start taking an honest look at yourself and building some self-awareness, right? So right now, there are things going on in your life and in your mind that you aren't aware of that are sabotaging your progress. Things like situations that trigger your sort of defense mechanisms and coping strategies. Things like your negative thoughts and negative beliefs that feel very real to you, but are actually very inaccurate and they're unconscious to you. You're not even aware that they're going on, but they're shaping the way you show up in the world, okay? I'm talking about things like stuck emotions that you never actually processed, things that are existing in your past that you're just not aware of because, again, either you're too distracted or they're just in your unconscious, basically. And the thing is, if you don't become aware of these things, if you don't make these things conscious, it's not as if these things are just kind of benign and they just sit in the background and they just take up space and don't do anything. These are the things, the programs, the patterns, the mental programs, that sit in the background and they kind of puppet your behavior with strings from the background. They run your life. But the problem is, you're just not aware of them. They're running your life, or you're being run by them, and you have absolutely no control over them. Self-awareness is hands down the most important thing to a man. Now, the single greatest practice I've ever come across, I've ever implemented in my life for building self-awareness is daily writing. Now, there are plenty of practices out there that people say are the best, but to be honest with you, mate, I think simplicity is key here. The simplest approach is usually the best. So what I would recommend is something called free-form writing. Now, there's a website specifically called 750words.com, and it basically is a website that gives you prompts and the space to write 750 words a day. It holds you accountable to it. You can track your streak and stuff. It tells you all your statistics. It's really motivational. It's very simple and it's free. 750 words a day is the sweet spot, basically. If you just do this every morning with your coffee, for example, I guarantee you, mate, in addition to the meditation, that will start to change your life in pretty big ways. So putting your thoughts onto paper is essential. Not just for its own sake and for building self-awareness, but it's also essential for this next phase. This next phase is all about your thinking, okay? There's one real reason why we're doing inner work, and that is to kind of bust out of this mental prison that we find ourselves in. I say mental prison because pretty much the results of your life are a result of the way you've been habitually conditioned into thinking. Now, most people suffer because they believe everything they think. And the problem with this is most of our thinking is automatic, it's repetitive, it's negative, and most importantly, mate, it is bloody inaccurate. So make no mistake about it, mate. If you cannot change the way you think, you will, I guarantee you, will not be able to change your life in any meaningful way and not for very long. But changing your thinking comes down to three things, basically. The first thing is becoming aware of your negative thinking and creating some distance from it. Okay, most people are just blended. We call it blending with negative thoughts. The thoughts just come up, they sit there, you think they're real, and you react emotionally to them in your actions and behaviors. You're not actually aware that thinking is happening. You think it's real, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is what we call reality testing. Okay, so reality testing your negative thoughts, and a big part of that involves becoming aware of the common thinking mistakes that humans make. I'll get to that in a second because it's quite a big topic, but I'll get to it in a moment. And the third thing is reframing your thinking to be more accurate and useful. So the exercise I gave you in the previous phase will help you with this tremendously. But the best book, I'm going to send you to another resource. The best book I've ever read on this topic of cleaning up your thinking, so to speak, is a book called Feeling Good, The New Mood Therapy by David Burns. Now this book itself takes you through all the 3 steps, and the book itself, just to give you a personal example, allowed me to pretty much heal my health anxiety. I occasionally have really bad bouts of health anxiety because I've experienced a lot of people die in my life. And those deaths often started with random little aches and pains that became full-blown cancer or whatever that killed someone, right? So I have occasional health anxiety. This book itself completely cured it. Turns out the health anxiety wasn't so deep, it was just a mistake of my thinking, okay? So I highly recommend you read this book and you integrate it and you do the exercises in the book because it will completely change your life. Now, while changing your thinking is absolutely essential to doing the inner work as a human being and achieving all the things you want in your life, sometimes we need an approach that goes deeper than that. And that is what this next phase is all about. And I'm including this because one of the most common things that I hear men specifically mention to me, because I work with men mostly, is something called emotional apathy. They don't actually feel emotions anymore. They don't really feel much. And this is why when working with a new guy, sometimes it's important that we go through kind of what we call an emotional thawing out process, where they reconnect with their emotions. Now, just a little bit about why emotions are actually really important and why emotions can hold you back. I believe that emotions that haven't been fully felt, that aren't fully felt, they have the potential to get stuck in the body. An emotion is just a form of energy, right? And in an ideal world, in an ideal scenario, an emotion comes up, it washes through you and passes through you. Okay, you feel it, it comes up, it does its work, and then it passes through. The problem is, too many of us resist these emotions. Now, just as a knot that might get formed in a muscle, which needs to be massaged out, right? Because if a knot forms in a muscle and it doesn't get taken care of, that knot can not only can that knot prevent the successful movement of the muscle, the knot itself can even be a source of injury. It can create its own forms of injury later on. Now, just in the same way that a knot in a muscle can create this effect, I also believe that a stuck, unprocessed emotion can have this exact same impact in the mind. If I start working with a guy, sometimes it's very obvious to me that this man is carrying a lifetime of unprocessed emotions, like a backpack, and he's just carrying it around with him. Sometimes it's written in his body, in the rigidity of the way he stands and sits. Sometimes it's written in his fucking face, in his facial expressions. This is why this phase is all about building emotional intelligence. Building emotional intelligence involves increasing your emotional vocabulary. Okay, I think Andrew Huberman on a podcast I listened to fairly recently talked about increasing emotional granularity, which is instead of basically saying, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. You know, it's not very descriptive, is it? Like, I'm good. I'm feeling good. Okay, but let's expand that. Okay, what are you feeling? How do you mean you're feeling good? I'm feeling grateful. I'm feeling content. I'm feeling passionate. Like, whatever the case is, increasing your emotional intelligence means becoming more specific about what you feel, which helps you feel the highest highs more and helps you navigate the lows when they're more present. But not only does it involve increasing your emotional vocabulary, it also involves getting out of the mind and into the body. How? By tapping into your direct felt experience of emotions. Instead of distracting yourself like most of us do when we feel an emotion, Get used to feeling the heaviness in your chest when you're sad. Feel, actually, without trying to label it or distract yourself or run away or trying to explain it or create a story about it, just feel how that feels in the body. Pay attention to it. Feel the shakiness in your hands when you're angry. Just don't try and do anything with it. Just feel it. Honestly, mate, I really cannot count the number of emotional breakthroughs that I've had with clients from doing this practice on its own, without any other practice. It's almost as if by bringing my client's attention and awareness to his body, the body starts serving up memories and insights, and it starts processing its own emotions and the emotional energy without us really having to do anything about it, only because we've stopped distracting ourselves and started paying attention. It sounds really woo-woo, mate, but I promise you it just works. Now, these previous 4 phases that we've worked on has been prepping you for this phase, because this phase is hands down the most intense phase you will ever go through. And to describe this, I like to use a metaphor. And this metaphor is the metaphor of a garden. Your mind is like a garden, all right? In that garden, you've got beautiful flowers everywhere, but you also have weeds that are hidden in random places. Now, the problem is, if you were in this garden, if you were the gardener, and all you did was focus on the flowers, oh, how beautiful are the flowers, keep watering the flowers. Meanwhile, the weeds were growing, and you just kept ignoring them. Oh no, we don't have any weeds in the garden. What are you talking about? What are weeds? I've never heard of weeds. You're crazy. And you just focused on watering the flowers. Well, what would happen? Eventually, the weeds would overgrow the entire garden. They'd cut through the roots, and eventually the flowers would die out, wouldn't they? This is what we're talking about when we're talking about dealing with the darkness in your own mind, the things that you don't like to pay attention to, the things that we would otherwise call your shadow. The weeds in this metaphor represent your fears, the traumas, the limiting beliefs, the stuff that's stuck in your past that you've not been dealing with, that you've not been paying attention to. The flowers represent the nice stuff, your potential, your goals, your dreams, your ambitions, all that stuff. We like focusing on that stuff, but when it comes to the weeds, we tend to ignore it, to our detriment. A good gardener knows how to deal with the weeds and take care of the flowers at the same time. And in the same way, what we must do as human beings is learn to confront our shadows through inner work. Now, this thing in itself is a huge topic. I could make another bloody 30-minute video on this topic alone. So what I'm going to do is just give you a few journaling prompts that kind of give you the essence of shadow work, right? If you were doing shadow journaling, which is something I highly recommend, then here's what the kind of things you would ask yourself. Question 1, what parts of myself am I uncomfortable with? Number 2, what's a difficult experience in childhood that I don't like talking about? And why don't I like talking about it? And question 3, what are some of the self-sabotaging behaviors and patterns that hold me back the most? And what kind of fears might be driving that behavior? Now, for more, you can actually download a free resource I created, which is the 31-day shadow work journal. Click in a link in the pinned comment down below to download that if you're interested in doing more shadow work. But now you have a system for doing the inner work completely. But I've got to tell you something, mate. All of it will be completely pointless if you don't have a sense of direction for where you want to go in your life. Because what you'll end up doing is you will be doing something that we call navel gazing, otherwise known as mentally masturbating. You'll just sit there and just be doing this random inner work, but you won't actually be directing it towards anything. That's why I created a free resource where in 7 days, you can craft a vision for your life that is compelling and motivating and gives you a reason to get out of bed in the morning. Okay? It will also give you a guided practice for being able to identify the exact actions and strategies for getting there. Okay, so you'll have clarity, motivation, and direction. All these things are absolutely fucking essential for a man, okay? So click the link in the pinned comment down below as well. Download it, commit to doing this in 7 days, and it will completely change your life, I guarantee it. But that was me. Take care, mate, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.